Hi, this is Diana Wu David, and I'm so pleased to be here talking to you about how to future-proof your career in a crisis. I have been talking about managing disruption and managing your career across disruption, but this is truly an unprecedented time. So it's really a pleasure to contribute and see if there's anything that I can do to ensure that all of you feel a little bit less anxious and more prepared. So, what are we going to talk about for this particular session? We're going to talk about getting future ready, having a bit of perspective on what's happening and where we're going. We'll talk about identifying priorities because that can keep you feeling a little bit less anxious and like you are not really sure where to start and like there are so many things that you could be doing. We're going to talk about articulating your value. This is a really good time. You have a little more time on your hands to think about what exactly it is that you do well, what skills you bring to bear, and maybe unconventional ways you can combine them to make an impact and help people. And finally, we will talk about networking to save time and build support. There's really no reason to think that you can't be a part of a community and continue to build your relationships and be strategic about that, even if you're working from home. So it's really an important time to take stock and really think about what you're trying to do. And we'll talk a little bit about staying sane as well. So, what about Future Proof and why did I write the book Future Proof Reinventing Work in an Age of Acceleration? I have a 20 plus corporate career working across the US, Asia, and Europe and managing disruption and growing businesses. So, I've worked for the Financial Times, I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, consulting to huge clients like Time Warner and Dun & Bradstreet and AT&T and Daycom in Korea. So I've had a lot of experience managing P&Ls, doing turnarounds, and also starting startups and also working in startups. So I reinvented myself a couple of years ago as a best-selling author of Future Proof, a professor. I teach at the business school level, an advisor for companies who are managing through disruption, and a bit of an accidental futurist. It's something that I've always been interested in, and a lot of my speaking now involves preparing people for a world of change. So I built up my own story. I've done lots of paid speaking. I've done a TEDx that you can look up. I've done articles, dozens of podcasts, and have learned social media over the last few years. So really it's about helping others to do the same and building a future-proof community through my future-proof course and writing and master classes. And that's what motivates me to get up every day and do the work I do and work hard at it, creating work that works for you. So what is the background here? The reality is that, in 2 months ago, I would say our world is changing. And now I would say our world has changed. And while massive epidemic has not, was not in my circles, it really is the reality that globalization has made this certainly a global pandemic. The fact that we have a longer lifespan means that we have the older population of 50 plus is the fastest growing working population right now, and we have longer lifespans. And during this time, in fact, those people are the most at risk. So it's a sort of interesting confluence of more people being more productive, more at risk. And then, of course, technology is playing a huge role in this moment, as we are now all working from home more. A lot of people are working from home that never expected to. As you can see from the stock market, Zoom, the video conferencing company, has gone through the roof. Trello, Asana, Slack, all these things that the sort of what some people might think of as on the fringe uh, companies or practices have now become central to the way we work. And so I guess the good news is that many of you already know how to use those, and you've taken a great leap forward. So pat yourself on the back for that. And I think that these will change forever the way that we come to work and even the value that we provide. So, automation will, think about the factories for those companies that have what they call dark factories, where it's all robots and very little humans. They don't have to worry about whether or not they can continue producing. And they can have an offsite staff of people who can manage some of that. So I think that that is in the future, and this might accelerate progress towards that. We will all have multiple careers, and we are all going to be much more adept at having virtual teams than we ever were before. So I hate to even share this slide. I mean, one of the big things that I talk about is the fact that safe work isn't, right? Their life is no longer about the Lego instruction booklet that says, a step one, put this brick here, step two, put that brick there. And, if you just do all the things that they say perfectly, then you'll end up with something spectacular at the end. Sorry. We all have to, as the Lego movie talks about, be master builders. So this is statistical knowledge about company lifespans decreasing, which is to say that you may outlast your company and you may outlast your corporate career, as we see really large companies like Kodak or other companies dissolve. And the flip side to that is that flexibility is rated a key corporate value. So people and companies and leaders are really counting on their staff to ensure that you will be able to be flexible and think of ways for the company to be flexible in the way that they serve customers in order to add value. Now, we have companies that are, in particular, small companies right now that are going out of business left and right. And that's really no news to you. So the needs of work also are changing, right? Suddenly you have increasing frequency of these black swan events like the COVID-19 virus. There have been others. Of course, I'm coming to you from Hong Kong. We had SARS before in 2003, which was another virus, which was much more contained. But other things like the financial crisis, or I was working in Asia during the Japan tsunami and the nuclear meltdown, which was a real issue. And I have seen companies who have really had to, go through that for months at a time when many people left Japan and many people refused to come in. So for those things, it's quite important to be more flexible and adaptable. And that's what you're learning right now. That's what we'll talk about. This all requires lifelong learning. So really a mindset shift. Forgetting static skills that you may have learned in school, you really need to embrace perpetual learning. And I'm sure that you've already done that if you're logging on to this virtual summit. I know I've had great opportunity to learn new things as I spend more time at home. Multiple jobs and careers, adaptability quotient is the new EQ and IQ combined. And globalization now requires new soft skills. So you need to think about how to relate to people across the globe and ways that you can play well together. I spend a lot of time in board advisory and having them talk about the multicultural elements or how it is to manage a board in, say, Malaysia versus New York City, completely different. And then, of course, it's learning to live with technology at all levels. So where are we going? Ultimately, I feel hugely glass half full. I think that all of these disruptions from this crisis give you an opportunity to craft a life that allows you to create important work in the context of a satisfying life. I really feel like the technology, the flexibility, all of this, it does have the possibility of overwhelm and certainly the feeling of overwhelm. I was in a future of work conference that The Economist held, and I was speaking on the panel with somebody from Google about technology and how to manage it, how to manage ourselves with all the technology that we need to master, and how you can get a sense of being always on when you have this technology at your fingertips and a sort of lack of boundaries. But I think that truly we have an opportunity, right? So where do we go from here? I think that, as you can tell, I love Lego. So there's Emmett, and he's got the map, and we're going to talk a little bit about the map so you can feel like you're making progress to your destination in this moment where there's a lot of challenge. It's really difficult to know where to start. So where do you start with your career? So one of the ways that you can get future ready is to really zoom out and gain perspective, such as this guy on the Great Wall. This crisis is going to pass, and you are going to see some changes and some things will go back to normal. But the reality is that a lot of the things that, a lot of the sort of direction we were headed in is the same direction, right? So we were talking about remote work years ago, 10 years ago. And if you had spent time 10 years ago thinking, how is the way I work going to change and how can I be ready for it? Then you might be a little bit more ready for where you are now, right? You might have made changes in your company that would allow more flexibility. For instance, you would have more remote access and business continuity plans. So thinking about where work, the future of work is such a big deal for me, that is certainly where I think about where things are headed. I do think that in the future of work, your value is more transparent. The outcomes that you can deliver are much more important, that your ability to collaborate virtually is going to be more important. But maybe you're in the airline industry, and they're going through a tremendous issue right now with people not being able to travel. At the same time, you have companies in the US like Boom that are talking about hypersonic air travel, which will allow us to go for just a few hours from New York to Tokyo, have lunch, turn around, and go back. So how does that change where you are in, say, the airline industry? How does what are some of the signals? Like, how does the green movement change? If your industry is hospitality, or if your industry is hospitality and we're all doing hypersonic travel and don't need to stay over, how does that change? So in January, I did my last speaking engagement in Shanghai in mid-January, and it was actually for a travel company, and we were talking about that, and they are deathly afraid that people will not be able to travel if they can connect so easily virtually. I think that building rapport is still an in-person thing, but think about your industry. And if you want to do this really simple, just future of Google, future of, and then your industry, and you will find loads of things. Subscribe to one sort of future focused newsletter, start thinking about it, articulate where you feel your industry is heading. Think about that as thought leadership. Maybe put that out on LinkedIn. If you don't feel comfortable making predictions, put it out as a question. Where do you all think that the future of hamburgers is going? And try to tag some of the people in your industry you think you'd like to have answer that question. And then in terms of your own skills and capabilities, making a few small bets on the things you might need to know in the future is really helpful. So I feel like in my business, and part of my business is speaking, and part of my business is teaching. I feel like I need to know a lot more about facilitating online. And so, as it happens, my business school course has been put online, and I have 6 weeks to completely put an entire course online. So, that idea of a bet, using Zoom breakout rooms, using new ways to connect to students. And I've been trialing master classes and sort of seeing what works and asking for feedback. Thank goodness that I started early, because all of a sudden I have 6 weeks to put what's an entire course on leading teams and interpersonal dynamics online. So that's an example of bets that paid off. There are lots of bets that you'll make that will be not right, so that's why they're small, and imperfect actions yield great feedback. So maybe if I decide that I want to put out some of those master classes, or maybe I decide to do my board training online, maybe I'll find out that nobody who's at board level really wants to get online for an online course. Who knows? But it's important to keep moving. So how do you decide what to keep moving on? Identify priorities. I know this is a little bit like you should set goals, but really in this moment, I think a lot of people will be thinking, I'm going to go for that promotion. So you have to revisit. I did all my goals for 2020 and I just revisited them because I knew that speaking would not be a revenue stream for me in the same way that it was. And I really have to reevaluate what some of those priorities are. So if you're thinking about your career, I would say don't be too attached to the outcomes in terms of your goals, but be really clear on the intentions. Is it that you want to manage people, and then look for opportunities to do that? Go beyond just the external expectations of you need to really think about what your what your boss has told you need to do to get to the next promotion, because that might not happen this year, who knows? And think more about broader definitions of success. So if you do lose your job in the coronavirus, start thinking about how you want to go forward in other aspects as well, relationships, experience, and opportunities, in addition to just the narrow scope that we often think about for our goals. And pick one or two of those and try to protect it from interruption. So I know a lot of people who have been grounded, road warriors who are thinking about their careers, and they are certainly, in some cases, very busy trying to keep things on track, trying to motivate their teams. And in other cases, they may have not that much to do. If you were a leader and you were in retail, or you're managing a restaurant and you can't be open and you close for 4 weeks, those are people who really have had to shift to other priorities on their sort of list of 5 to 10 and said, you know what, I'm going to focus on my health, or I'm going to be home since my kids are home homeschooling. I've had that for 2 months. I'm really going to focus on, trying to connect with them and see what they're up to. I'd never have time to do that otherwise. Now I'm going to really focus on investing in that relationship, because in 2 months' time, you're going to have to go back to the upward trajectory and probably have to do some really heavy lifting in terms of digging out of, whatever the disruption has been due to the coronavirus. Take stock. It's time to take stock of what current skills you have that'll be useful in the future, and how those can help other people. I would say, the how to help motto would be to fill in the how can my current skills and message be helpful to X in this time of crisis. And you can be really creative. I have to say, I just posted something on Facebook because I've been doing so many Zooms far before any of the remote work and shelter in place took place. And I was in the US and my parents passed away. And it's a really tough time. And lo and behold, a lot of their friends are super scared of the coronavirus. And we were just before the true panic. It was about a month ago. And we had a much smaller memorial service. And we live streamed it on Zoom. And then that was very much spur of the moment. All my online learning and facilitation came to bear in a very strange way. And I just wrote a post about it because there are people who are right now really struggling right now. And so thinking about things in a unique way. You've seen lots of media about how people are thinking about 3D printing ventilators and thinking about how to track the virus and thinking about how to repurpose their business from a restaurant to a takeout. And even people are thinking about how to prop up NGOs so that they can help the people most in need when a lot of their funding is going away. And their folks are on the front line. So really, that's sort of outward looking and what can I do? But it's also a time truly to take stock, to really think about what are my skills? What are my values? What are the things that people always ask me about? What are the big questions, the ones they always come to me about? What are the things that people are telling me I'm really good at if I ask them for a testimonial on LinkedIn? What are the things that my friends come to me for? What are the things that when I'm at a cocktail party and somebody gives me an idea and, immediately I'm like, oh, I know what you could do. So for me, it's always, a lot of it is connections. I always know somebody that you can talk to take your business forward or to take your project forward. And I'm always excited about bringing people together for our future-proof course participants. So take stock and then determine your value, right? So you can find your Venn. I wrote a post called Life's Little Instruction Booklet about combining assets to find out what is uniquely yours. Everybody has some unique message or unique assets. Sometimes it's just your voice. So I have one coaching client who is a wellness instructor. And of course, she's not teaching yoga. They've completely shut down her yoga studio. She's very well known. She teaches at one of the biggest yoga studios across Asia. And she has been nervous to put things online. And yet there's another person in the same space who has been online quite a bit. And she said, wow, somebody else is already doing that. And she found out when she did go online that people were really hungering for it because the other person is a really out there personality, has really extroverted, very functional in terms of yoga. And my client is more of a healer. She's much more Zen. She's a bit of an introvert. And people were actually hungering for that. So sometimes it's not just the things that you have and that you can speak to people about. It's really about the way that you come across in your own voice. So again, what is it that what are people asking you for now? What is it that you're asking them for? Really start to think about what is your value, not just in this time of crisis. I think if you're really thinking about your career and thinking about your work, you have to think about what you can provide now, and you have to be creative about that. And you have to go and ask other people within your company how you can help, or more importantly, identify gaps and what's going on and offer specific help that you can really offer and that you alone can do. And then again, sort of getting some perspective to think about the big future dream that you've had. And if you do have that time, you're not commuting to work, presumably. You may have kids at home, and so that's an added task. But thinking about progress you might be able to make on a future dream that you can marry to the present is a way that some people are coping. So that book that you've always wanted to write, that's on your topic of expertise, or even like a white paper or a blog post. There are people that are extremely successful executives and that I'm working with that are interested in developing content for high-end publications and for personal brand reasons. And they have for a long time said that they can't find time to do that. And I think that this is the time, right? This is the time to say, I can actually write that one blog post. So get to that. So in a changing world, there's really one thing that we have as an edge against automation. And I think that it's really important to come back to that because A, we need it more now than ever before. And B, when things are automated, when there are routine tasks that you don't have to do, when AI and machine learning can take away some of the things that they can do better, then truly the focus, truly your edge is really to make people feel like they belong, to make people feel relevant, and to create moments of wonder. And that may seem a little bit like woohoo, but I have recently done a talk including this idea to a very high level women's group. And I asked for examples, and I love your examples. Please feel free to email them at Diana at Diana with David. One of the women said, I lead 1,000 technology workers across Asia, and I have tried to create these moments of wonder by having big Zoom groups and having people share with each other how they've helped in that week, or share something they appreciated from somebody else. And she said, it's such a small thing, but the amount of kind of wonder that she created and the positive effect on the culture there at a time when people are quite anxious was really extraordinary. So what else is the future? Collaboration. This is a great time for you to find allies if you haven't already. These are the people who you can ask to be mentors. These are people who maybe you already have your allies. They're people that can do micro-mentoring, the kind of people who just say, hey, this is the right time to do X. Determine your strategic networks. Who exactly should be in your network? Not everybody. I had a LinkedIn post once that became like a huge viral success about when you should leave your job, in fact. And I think that it had 15,000 shares or something like that. And I don't think a single person that is part of my business came from there. It was fun. It was cool. But the strategic people are the people in my networks on Future of Work who actually call me up and say, hey, I thought you were the perfect person to do a project with us on Future Work Skills Academy. And we'd like to come bring you on as a partner. That kind of networking, be it on social media or via Zooms, or inviting people for Zoom calls, which is really important these days, is absolutely essential. Developing a reputation. Now is a good time for you to start putting your ideas out there to draw the right people. So some of the things that I do on LinkedIn get a lot of my business, bring a lot of my business to me because people see my ideas. They know what kind of things I'm thinking. They know what kind of collaboration that I'm doing with other people. And they think that I have interesting ideas, and I think that I'm fairly easy to work with. So that is great. Makes a lot of makes it a lot easier. I don't have to market. I just bring people to me because I'm quite articulate about what I can offer and what value I provide. And then again, consider unconventional partnerships, right? This is the time for you to take experiments, because people are quite forgiving, and to see if you can partner with some people that you never thought that you would partner with. So I've been done Facebook Lives with an influencer group on remote work. Now, I don't really think of that audience of influencers and digital influencers as my people per se, but I think the future of work and people who are interested in it are my people. And so I learned a lot from them about digital marketing, and I think they learned a bit from me on future of work. And certainly since we're in Asia, so we're probably about 2 months ahead, I would say, of the US in that respect. And if you can, find a tribe or create a tribe, because it's easier than ever, and you don't have to invite people in person, right? So Seth Godin talks about a tribe as just a group of people connected to one another, connected to a leader, and connected to an idea, right? You just need a shared interest and a way to communicate. And I think we can all agree that, this virtual summit is an example of that, where people are coming together around an idea, around communication platform, and around the generosity of the speakers and the organizer to really try and help people out. Finally, stay sane, right? These are all great ideas. I don't want to add to the 5,000 ideas about what you should be doing at this time. I think you need to be realistic about what you can control and what you can't, right? You cannot, unless you're in a small company, control the future welfare of your entire organization. If you're working for FedEx or Coca-Cola or whatever, you can have some sort of impact over your career. You can have an impact on your life, and you can have an impact on your health and your relationships, but you yourself are not going to make or break Coca-Cola. So please just remember that. The work will be there when this crisis is over. There's not a lot of examples that we have of people working 180 hours, maybe the healthcare workers, but certainly not so much the entrepreneurs and executives. And changing the face of their company. There's a lot of luck involved in this. Zoom is not, skyrocketing because they've been working harder. They're in the right place at the right time. Some of you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. And in those cases, when you're very scared and there's not much you can do, then really it's important to breathe, start to take stock of your assets, start to think about ways to market yourself, take some time to developing that network, because the reality is, we're all going to be up and down in terms of our jobs. Even if you're self-employed, then you're worried about where the next client's coming in. But you need to have it be sustainable. As McKinsey found when they did this huge study on their own employees, burnout rested with the employee. So no matter what their policies were, when they did the survey about people exiting due to burnout, how much vacation time do you think those people had still left? Well, 100% of them still had vacation time. So something to think about. You yourself need to take responsibility for your own sanity. And it's something to think about in terms of your team and your clients as well. If you don't see them, you may not know. So it's important to spend some time really thinking about whether or not people are staying healthy, staying sane, and weathering the storm well. So, future fearless. Fear is a good emotion. It helps us take action. If it gets too big or too amorphous, then not so much. So I'd like you guys all to be future fearless. And what we talked about is having some flexible foresight, really starting to think about the longer term, because you have time to do that. And this crisis is a crisis, but in 2 years' time, maybe even 2 months' time, 2 years, 10 years, things will continue on. And if you can start to develop a practice of foresight, then that's going to be really helpful to you. Be clear on your value. Make sure you understand the value you have beyond just your job title, beyond your credentials, your function. Really dig deep and think about that. Start to get invested in your network if you aren't already. Think about 3 people that you want to meet and approach them either for a Zoom coffee or on LinkedIn, or if you're really desperate, then you can link into me. Finally, focus on the things that you can do, not the things that you cannot control, and well-fueled. And that should make you just a little bit more anti-fragile than you were before. So I hope that's helpful. Do something today that your future self will thank you for. I have been trying to put out some master classes and free sessions, and we will also put a big discount in for this particular summit for the Future Proof course coming up June 2nd. So you're welcome to go to the bit.ly for the discount, or you're also welcome to go to my website, www.dianawoodavid.com, and sign up for the Future Proof checklist, which is 11 questions to ask yourself about the future, or sign up on courses for the actual course. It's a 10-week course, and we get together, we huddle, we support each other to create the work that works for you. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the summit. Bye-bye.